are welcome to Inspiration House, inspiring hope.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome us to another edition of our Young Adults platform. I want to thank God for you. I want to thank God for everyone that is here. Last week, we started a very, very important subject, which we are going to continue today. We had a very, very beautiful one. Last week, we started to speak on kingdom life. Kingdom life. That was our focus last week. And we're going to continue on the same subject this week. Well, I'm sure some of us are probably hearing the man of God for the first time. Our guest is Rev'd Ajayi, popularly known as Rev'd Eugene. For those of you who don't know, I don't know the meaning of Eugene, but he probably will tell us himself. He's a strategy and methods consultant. He's a social entrepreneur and a social cultural architect. By the grace of God, he's a missiology and his synergy strategist, providing strategic support to churches and church networks in the areas of church planting, church growth, leadership, ministry development, community cohesion, and so on and so forth. He's the husband of one wife, and that wife is a female, and he's been in the Western world for more than 2 decades. So he has a solid understanding of what we are talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor and pleasure to introduce to us God's servant, Reverend Eugene. Last week he came with his cap. I don't know why he didn't come with it today.
I'm trying to be like you today.
Okay, what's to be like? All right. So without wasting time, I'm just going to ask us to just pray in 1 minute. Lord, speak to me tonight. Lord, stir my heart. What exactly do you want me to know? Our focus is kingdom life. There is a life God wants you to live, regardless whether you are black or white, brown, yellow, regardless the part of the world where you are located. God wants you to live the kingdom life. He wants you and I, he wants us to live the kingdom life. Can you please pray? Can you ask the Lord, help me, Spirit of the living God. I want to live the kingdom life. There's just one life, the kingdom life or no other life. God did not call us to live the culture of America or Africa or whatever. Just one life, and that is the kingdom life. Talk to God. Lord, speak to me. Open my eyes. Have your way tonight. Thank you, Spirit of the living God. In Jesus' wonderful name, we have prayed. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and pleasure to invite to the platform Reverend Eugene as he continues where he stopped last week. Thank you very much. God bless you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to hear from you just to make sure that I have your attention. If you are a brave person, you can show your face. It's like I'm showing mine to, and Pastor is showing his. So can you guys say hello, hi to me? Makes me feel welcome.
Hello.
Thank you. I'm waiting
Good
for the
evening.
rest of.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm still waiting. You know, I will wait.
Let's be fast, guys. If you are not showing your face, show your voice. At least do something. Do one of the two.
Yes,
show your
so.
face, your voice, or something.
Yes,
Good evening, sir.
Thank you. And that's the most spirited good evening I've had today. So I'm very happy now. Anyway, so thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And you probably have noticed. Let's see. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
We're hearing you.
Okay. So let me see if I can change
What do you want?
I'm just trying to sort out my audio here to see if I can get the sound in my ear.
We are all hearing you and we are seeing you perfectly.
You can see me and you can hear me. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. So, who remembers some of the points that we raised last week? You know, we both did some talking. I talked, you guys talked to you, share some ideas. Who remembers? So 2 things. Remember, if you can remember the highlight of last week, and it will be so much rewarding for me if you guys have questions from last week that we can start to build on today. So I work a lot with questions. I like to, when I'm working with your generation, I like to work a lot with questions. So you'll be helping me a lot if you have questions. But if not, that's also still fine. So, but who wants to remind me some of the things I learned last week, some of the things that challenged you from our conversation? What were your takeaway points? What were your questions? Silence. Can hear the brain is ticking. Did you take notes last week?
Praise God, sir.
Praise the Lord. Go for it.
Okay. From the literary, we talked about different kingdoms, and you asked what were the different kingdoms that Sister Ngozi said, godly kingdom and the satanic kingdom. And I did raise the suggestion that, we have different kingdoms that we're also kingdoms, and Sister Ethene talked about kingdom as a king overseeing the territory. And we talked about how can we make a difference in this era with our younger ones, and we didn't really have much discussion on that. So that's what we're waiting for.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for that. Does anybody else want to add to that? What she said, you have a question, but she's highlighted that how do we make a difference in the lives of young people? That would be a starting point, with our baseline still being the kingdom lifestyle. Anybody else? Maybe a gentleman this time around? Any brave hearts amongst you men? And it could be a question that you wanted to ask last week, you forgot to ask. I'm going to start with that. Gentlemen, this is going to be an interactive session. Except you want to admit that we're not listening last week or you didn't take notes here, but at least still speak up. I'm waiting. Pastor, how many gentlemen do we have on this call, aside from Samuel?
Maybe you should call the names.
Because I'm looking, some names, I know some names like Abosede, I know that's a lady. But let's see. Okwemipo, I can't tell.
Okwemipo is a male.
Aha, there you are. Speak up. I want to hear your voice. Were you here last week, Okwemipo?
Yes.
Okay, tell us something. Let's talk. What do you remember?
Oh, about last week? Yes.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm asking. Yes.
Oh yes. What we talked about last week was about the issues that youth face in the current society. We talked about not being too insecure, or Samuel mentioned another point. Sister Godia mentioned a point too about I remember the insecurity part. You mentioned about social media, about people just going to church because you just want to go to church, or just to show or people that are not Christians because they are not true Christians because maybe their parents were Christians and they've been going to church all their lives.
All right. Thank you for that. You can see that, having you guys share is definitely, it helps us to be able to relate to the continuing conversation. But otherwise, it will just be me coming in and telling what I think, and you may not be able to apply it. That's very useful. Thank you very much for that. I'll just give 5 more seconds just in case anybody else wants to add anything. If you're inspired to add, you're very, very welcome. But everyone still get ready if you to add now or not. Everyone, I'd love for you to participate. That's how we get benefit out of this kind of meetings. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so last week I took some points down. I think some of the things you guys picked up was social media has been one of the things that blocks young people from living the life of Christ. I think, yes, as you said, we cited insecurity, that, well, people don't want to be singled out for standing up for Christ. We cited badly behaved Christians, and particularly Christian leadership, maybe in form of pastors, parents. It could be because we are made in life to check out role models and to follow role models. So those who we see who should be role models, if we feel that we can't trust them, or we feel that their behavior is not consistent with what they are projecting, then we mistrust them, and then we feel, oh, we can't follow those ones. We just probably have to find our own pathway. And yes, that has happened indeed. And I think another point was, let's see, where is it at again? You see that the fact that your generation loves entertainment more than God, and also we also talked about ineffective and irrelevant methodology. So I think that was my summary of probably the way we reach the youth and young adults today. But before I try to give any answers, how can we reach the youth and young adults today more effectively? I want to ask you all a question. I'd like your opinion on this. The question is, who is responsible for ensuring that your generation is properly reached? Who is the culprit? Who should we blame if your generation is not reached? Who can we hold? Who wants to help me out with it? Let's just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind, because every one of you is going to blame someone in your mind, whether you like it or not. There's someone you think should be doing that job well and they're not doing it. Who do you think it is? I'd like to hear from you. Just so that we don't waste time, I'll mention names. I think, oh, thank you. Someone says I'm responsible. So you're the one that we can blame. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But thank you for that. Who else? Who agrees? Sister Ngozi thinks she's responsible. Of course, doesn't mean she's responsible for all of you. She's probably saying it's personal responsibility. Who agrees? Who disagrees? Do you think any other person or type of person are responsible? I'd like to hear from everybody.
Parents.
Parents? Very good. Okay, parents are responsible. Yes.
I think spiritual leaders too are responsible.
Spiritual
or
leaders.
like people that have any spiritual position or something like that.
Okay. Spiritual leaders, parents, thank you very much. Any other person have any other suggestions? Or do we agree that those are the three most responsible? First, yourselves. 2, spiritual leaders. 3, parents. What else? Any other ideas?
We can add society, sir.
Okay, that's number 4, society. Society also can be responsible. Okay, any other one? Or
The government.
Government, okay. Government, okay. Any other one? So that's 5. Okay, let's peg it at 5. Of those 5, yourself, parents, government, society, spiritual leadership, who is most responsible out of the five for that change to happen? For your generation?
I think ourselves.
Okay. All right. Let's have a vote on that. Who agrees? Who disagrees? Because if we're discussing it, the reason why we're all spending time here is because it's an important thing that we need to solve. So if we can agree, then whatever we share going forward will make sense. Okay, so we have another person who agrees. If you disagree, let's know why. Let's know why not. So she said, your generation, you personally, you're responsible for ensuring that you follow God properly. In spite of all of the challenges that we've raised, all the things that we said, ultimately, somebody has to be responsible for that change. Who agrees, who disagrees that it is yourselves that the responsibility is on the most?
I agree.
Okay, and who that is that Yetunde?
I agree.
Okay, so since I'm not hearing anybody's voice, is there anybody who disagrees? Or everybody
I
agrees?
agree.
Okay, all right. So do I assume that everybody agrees?
Okay, so I agree to some extent, but I really think that well, I'm not a generation of the young adult, but I feel that the generation before them didn't pass things down enough.
Yeah.
And so we, to some extent,
excuse me,
we have
you
a
have to pick one,
responsibility.
not two. Pick one out of
Okay,
four.
I disagree. Okay.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
probably agree. So who do you think? So I think you are naming the generation that should pass. You think they are also responsible?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. All right. That's good. So, and that's very good. So it's good that we know that you're not part of their generation. So that means somehow it's still, it means everybody here is owning the responsibility. That's where we want us to get to. So if we're here and we're not part of the younger generation, we are responsible to do whatever we can to enable them. And that's part of why we're in this call. We're doing our bit. But it's also important that...
Can I make an explanation where I agree that they are responsible? The reason is I didn't have anybody per se to hand over anything to me. Right? Per se, my parents were not born again when I got born again. Right? But the truth is, when you are talking about spiritual parenthood, there are foster parents. It was my duty when I was coming up to, after I got saved, I knew that, look, you can't just remain where you are. The onus lie on me to take responsibility for who I become in life. So I had to look for parenting. As in, I had to resort to books. I had to resort to anywhere I could get whatever I needed. If you plant a seed, you know that the seed must be in the right environment. So I was looking for it. So whatever I became today was because I was desperate. I was passionate. There was hunger in my heart. So I take responsibility for it because my parents didn't have what I have. So they couldn't have given to me what I needed. That's the reason why I believe that I must be responsible for what I become. God bless you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for that. So I think that just buttresses what, Justice Ngozi said, that I think ultimately every one of us should take responsibility for our own growth as much as possible. There may be factors that can enable it and contribute towards it, like having good people around, but we ultimately cannot depend on the goodwill of other people and co. We have to grab whatever is available, look for whatever is not available to make sure that we grow, and that's what Pastor is saying. So I want us to start with that. So how can we surmount these problems? We have to, as a generation, we have to make up our minds to do exactly what Pastor just said, which is to find every way and every means possible to ensure that we live this lifestyle of the kingdom without excuses. Let me tell you why it's dangerous if we don't do that. It's because as long as you're old enough to say, I want to buy this car, I don't want that car. I want to buy this shirt, I don't want that shirt. I want this career, I don't want that career. I like this girl, I don't like that girl. I like this boy, I don't like that. But as long as you're old enough to say that, God holds you accountable for your life. So that means if all our lives end right now, you will be fully answerable to God. You know, if Jesus Christ shows up right now and says, what have you done with your life? And don't think he's not going to ask you that question. And don't think you are too young for it. If society doesn't think you're too young for it, God doesn't think you're too young for it. So it's dangerous for us not to live our lives accountably for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So it's in our best interest, every single one of us, to pay attention to our own lives and make sure we live it to the best way possible. So as we think about these challenges, these are the things I want us to realize. So, and I want you to start processing it to say, okay, if it's on you, as we've said, as we've all agreed, what are the areas where you guys need help as a generation? And let me explain what I mean to you. In our generation, whether right or wrong, we had different mechanisms in place that helped us, that at least we thought helped us to do God's will. We had churches, we had Bible studies, we had prayer meetings, we had marathon prayer meetings, we had different things that we put in place. And right or wrong, at least it's helping us, it's propping us up, it's putting oxygen in our mouths and all this way. We're just going with it. In your generation, if you actually look at the statistics of how many people are in your age group that do not know Jesus, that do not love Jesus, that do not submit to him, if we think just because we don't feel like it, that and we don't follow him, that maybe by some magic, when we die, he's just going to wave a magic wand and everyone is going to get into heaven, where they were lying to ourselves. So there's a lot of lost people in every generation, but your generation, particularly for the reasons that we've mentioned, are not paying attention to these things, and many will be lost. And if you think, okay, at least I know the truth, I will get to heaven. Even if you get to heaven, it does not mean you still not be judged for not doing the things he called you to do. It doesn't mean you're not going to be judged for living selfishly, for living all your life to gratify your own desires. You see, your degree, your medical degree, your whatever degree you have, whatever job you have, whatever skills and experience you have on this earth, once you die, it becomes irrelevant in heaven, because you're not going to need your profession in heaven anyway. So if all I was slaved for and labored for was to buy a house, buy a car, buy houses, buy horses, every single thing you spend your money on in the next 50 years will not exist anymore. Even if you bought a house now, who says that house will not be built over by somebody else? If you buy a car now, in 50 years, it wouldn't exist. Every cloth you are buying now, the Calvin Kleins and all those of you like designer, in the next 20 years, even if it still exists, somebody else will be wearing it, or maybe wearing it, of course. Maybe if you live to be 70, 80, 90, you still won't be wearing it. You see my point? So a lot of this stuff that we live for today is not going to last till eternity. The only thing on you that's going to last till eternity is you. So we have to think about all of these things in such light. So I'd like to then you guys participate. Let's now have a discussion together. How can we support you? How can I support you tonight? What questions do you guys have about your own personal work? Let's not blame the system again. Let's not blame social media. Let's say you are here on this call, you men, you ladies. And I know if we say things like do ministry, you're going to say, no, we don't want to do ministry. Ministry is, I just don't feel it. All those things are excuses for the Lord. That's just the truth. So whether you call yourself pastor, teacher, evangelist, doesn't matter. God expects you to be those who are projecting the truth to your generation. And listen to me. Whilst we might say the pastors and the leaders are not motivating you, the question you should ask yourself is, the generation that's in 12 years to 17 years right now, okay, what would they say of you in the next 20 years? So when someone is having this conversation with someone who is 13 years old now, and maybe at that, then they're in their 20s, and we're saying, hey, what's the biggest barrier to your Christianity? Will they mention you and say, hey, sorry, it's the generation that went ahead of us that did not give us anything to look to? What will be said of you? So let's have a serious chat as children of God. What are your challenges? What are your aspirations? In what specific ways can we support you on this journey? And I'm going to pause there so we can have a conversation. So who wants to engage in this? Who wants to go first? How do we succeed? What do you want to do differently? What challenges will make it difficult? And it could be, okay, explain X, Y, Z. I want to understand what you mean. Yep, go for it.
Mine is actually a question.
Okay.
You know that in the workplace today, they don't allow you to preach Jesus, to talk about Jesus. So how do we go about that? Like, preaching Jesus to our colleagues at work?
Thank you very much. Well, I'll give two advices that's based on experience. One is change the context. Number two, you can also use the appropriate method. So when I preach Jesus, for instance, particularly in places where they are really against it, where preaching to someone can, probably cost you your job, I change the context. What I mean is, and I'll give you two examples. If I can't talk to someone about Jesus at work, does it mean I cannot take them out to lunch and talk to Jesus over lunch? It's not at work technically. Does it mean I can't talk to them after work if I take them out to dinner? Does that make sense? And sometimes I've advised people, just take your friends out and set them up. What do I mean by that? So let's say let's say I worked maybe in a different company. I'm a Christian, you're a Christian, you work in a different company, and there's this particular workmate of yours that you've been trying to speak to, but who wouldn't listen, or you've not had the chance. Just tell me, hey, Pastor Eugene, I want to set this guy up. So what time do you have time? I'm going to go to Olive Garden, 2 o'clock on Wednesday. If you show up on that place, we'll just make it like we just met. Just help me pin that person down. Guess what? I'll be so happy to do that. So I'm just basically saying we have to be creative and innovative when we're sharing the gospel. The workplace is not the only place we can share the gospel. These are people who have a life. If they won't hear it in the workplace, they will hear it in the gym, and so on and so forth. Second thing, which is, how do I share the gospel? Sometimes it's the way we share it. We can find a contextual way to share the gospel that it will not seem that offensive. Let me give you an instance. So sometimes you are there and you are setting them up for a conversation just by the way you leave. So, and eventually people are going to make a comment that makes you project what you are, who you are. So let's say, for instance, someone said to me one time, I don't even know why all this Christianity stuff, of course he felt he had all the information, all this Christianity stuff, I don't really dig it, just, this opium of the masses. I say, guy, you don't know what you're talking about. Of course, the way I'm talking about is like, he's curious. And I said, see, everybody in this world wants power. The reason I'm a Christian is because it gives me power. Does he not want to know more? What kind of power? I said, well, power to control my future.